Welcome back to Off Record On Point podcast for another deep dive, and this time into workplace culture. And today we're joined by the amazing Ellie Edwards-Scott, who is co-founder of the Advisory Collective and also one of my fellow co-founders of Digital Leading Ladies Community. And today we're going to uncover the secret to being an unstoppable leader. I'm Julia Linehan, and I'm the founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. As usual, we may touch on some sensitive topics and issues, so be sure to take a look at the description for a list of resources and topics to help you with anything you might need while you're listening.
We have to step away from us, Kasey, because we are joined by Ellie Edwards-Scott. Welcome, Ellie. Good to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you on this session because we wanted this theme to really be about leadership, about female empowerment, and about career growth. And I know you well, and I really wanted our audience to get to know you and hear your story as a leading light. So maybe the first bit would be just to frame your story, your journey.
Once you've had 20 years in the industry, you don't need to quantify at 20, whatever it is. So we just say over 20 years. That's So I started out in regional press back in the days when people read a lot of newspapers, which was great fun. And then I went into B2C press at V&U Publications, which was a heyday. I remember getting my corporate Amex card and being just thrilled going out.
Good times.
It was the best times going out, being encouraged to take clients out, to have fun. But then I went into online quite early. I went into online recruitment firstly. The Guardian Media Group set up a online recruitment company called workthing.com. So I went there and kind of rose up through the ranks there. And then I think when we first crossed paths, Jules, was when I went to AdLink. So yes, AdLink Media, Sales House, and kind of rose through the ranks there to become MD before I was headhunted into Group M, where I worked with some of the sharpest and brightest minds I ever have within the industry. That was great times. And I then have been consulting, really, in terms of what I'm doing now. I've been consulting since 2016 and co-founded the Advisory Collective with my fabulous business partner, Lisa Monaldo, in 2018. So since then, been on my own journey and with my own business, and similar to you, Julia, in terms of being a female founder or just a founder, it's been a roller coaster ride, but it's been an absolutely amazing ride. And I've worked with some brilliant people along the way and continue to enjoy what I do, which is a good motivator to get out of bed every morning.
Amazing. Thank you, Ellie. I never know how you guys met, so that's nice for me to hear.
Well, probably what Ellie's missing out is it was probably in a bar with a large vino.
It would have been a bar with a very large glass of wine. When I was at AdLink, we were based in Holborn, and in fact, I worked kind of in and around Holborn for a few years because Group M was there as well. And Jules and I would meet on the Kingsway quite often, wouldn't we, Jules?
Yeah.
And, have a misspent afternoon. So yes,
very important afternoon. I think I was at IASH in those days, and
strategic business decisions were made.
Oh, they were indeed, and I love the fact that both Ellie, myself, and we've got 6 other co-founders of Digital Leading Ladies, including your business partner Lisa Ronaldo. And I think it's lovely that we've known each other and grown with each other. And it's also spanned. I mean, obviously, I'm about to hit my 4-year soberversary on Saturday.
It's amazing.
But I love it, even though the last 4 years have been without the vino. None of it ever makes a difference, just because I happen to have a different ingredient. It's been lovely.
You're your effervescent self, anyway.
I'm less annoying, less loud.
Well, I am so privileged to be sat here with the both of you guys as such incredible role models for me. And it's not just me that have been influenced by people like both of you, but Ellie, you've been a force of nature in so many women's lives. What motivates you?
I was brought up by a single parent mother who was and still is a force of nature. She brought myself and my sister up to unapologetically be ourselves, and also with the belief that we could do anything, and that's like really important. I mean, from when I was at prep school, I was the only child of colour for the first 2 years in my class, and it was
Wow.
just like, yep, you just get on with it. You do what you need to do. I did ballet. We went to theatre. She pushed us, but also encouraged us to embrace um, our whatever hobbies, and also taught us that nothing was out of range and nothing was off limits.
Yeah.
she would save hard so that she could take us out to the theatres or to museums or out for dinner, and from seeing that and seeing how hard she worked, that just encouraged me. She also ran her own business, so she had her own nursery. So it was, was a leader, was an entrepreneur from an early stage in my life, and that drove me. And then, as I say, having a daughter, I've also got a son, but having a daughter and a son, you want to show your children that the world is your oyster. And
Yeah.
although there are challenges and there are barriers, you can either look at those barriers as a maybe as a hurdle to overcome, or you can look at it as a barrier and say, right, actually, I can't do this. And I try to look at um, obstacles maybe as a hurdle, or how do you overcome it? How do you go around it? How do you navigate it to
Yeah.
do what you need to do? I'm also a trustee for DigiLearning. So Lisa Goodchild's also a co-founder of Digital Leading Ladies, but her and Sarah, who are another forces to be reckoned with.
Oh, aren't they?
I'm surprised we all get on so well because we all talk so much, and when we're all together in a room,
Oh,
it's,
we
it's
don't get a word
ridiculous.
in. That's why we can't have all of us on this. Can you imagine?
Exactly, it's literally us all fighting for it. But they're fabulous ladies, and the charity has two programs. One which is focused on females and kind of empowering young females, and the one that's focused on empowering everybody from, what do you call it, disadvantaged, underrepresented backgrounds, whatever you like to call it, but just helping people who don't necessarily have access. And I think, in this day and age, it's still quite shocking in a country such as Britain, that there is a stark difference between the haves and the have nots. There are people that just don't have access. I mean, during the pandemic, we really saw that. My children have always been fortunate. They've also had their own laptops, desks, rooms, etc. You know, Up and down the country, you've got children that were trying to study on mobile phones. Maybe their parents' mobile phone, and it's ridiculous that
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that start can just limit what somebody can do. So if I can in any way help, encourage, I mentor young people as well. I also sit on a board of care support and housing organisations. So we have 4 customer groups. The company's called Look Ahead Care and Support, and we have 4 customer groups: those with mental health issues, homelessness, young carers, and learning and disability. So again, that's important, because rather than just kind of sitting in a ivory tower and kind of going, okay, I'll donate or I do something once a month, I'm actually interacting with the customers, seeing the customers in their environment, and we're looking at how
Yeah.
we can improve those customers' day-to-day life and well-being. And it's important that we
Yeah.
do say
That's
customers,
amazing.
because actually we are working for those different core groups. It's not about us, it's about those customers.
That's amazing, Ellie. There is so much there to unpack and so much good work that you're doing. And all I saw was that you are giving so much of your time and your energy into these important causes like DigiLearning, which is where we happen to find Faith on our
Faith.
team,
I
who
was
is
going to say, we'll
incredible.
always be grateful for Faith.
We'd be lost without Faith. And so while you're giving, what do you get back for yourself, and why is it important for you?
It's important for me as a Black female because, you know, when we look at opportunities, I touched on it earlier, and that not everybody has the same opportunities, whether that's down to your social mobility, whether that's down to your race, whether it's down to your gender. So it's important for me, because I have had these opportunities and I continue to have these opportunities, to help others who maybe just don't even have access. You know, it's surprising that some people, well, it's not surprising that, depending on your background, depending on your surroundings, you can have limiting self beliefs, and you don't even realize you've got limiting self beliefs, because those people around you just are doing are not doing certain things or not accessing certain things. So you think that you can't do that. Even something like, regularly going up to West End or in London, or some people just don't think they belong in certain situations and don't think that they can do certain things.
Which is wrong. Anyone can do anything. You're right.
You're giving so much, but actually, does it give something back to you, Ellie? Because I think it should.
Is it charging your battery? Yeah.
Yeah, just a sense of achievement.
Yeah, it should be.
We go to MadFest and we see those DigiLearning cohort on stage, presenting in front of a group of people. That's huge, because that skill, to be able to go and stand in front of a crowded room and talk about whatever it may be, or present. That's a great skill which will serve them well in life. So yeah, it gives me a sense of achievement when I know that I've helped others. But also it gives me some encouragement, because I look at my children as 13 and 16, and look at their paths, and it encourages me that there are people such as us that are willing to help and inspire.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I have the pleasure of I'm doing a presentation training to the DigiRise crew, this latest cohort coming up. So, dear Lord, they get the Julia Linehan treatment. We're turning out lots of people who are loud and bold.
Get your pitch, pause, pace.
Pitch, pause, pace, stress. Kasey's just recently been trained in it. I've got to ask, and Elliot, I know, so I see so much of your life and how much you juggle your responsibilities. And we did a session with Caroline Mastoras, who is the outgoing president of Bloom and a mum and at Salesforce. And we asked her this. We were like, is it an illusion to have it all? Is it, have you got it, have you got it under control? And what's your secret, I suppose, source with this of how you juggle everything?
You know what? It's a really good question, and burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
I do often get burnt out, and I do have to say no. And I've actually learned to say no over the last, it may seem odd, but I've learned to say no over the last probably 12 to 18 months, because before that I used to try and do everything and be at everything. It's like, George, I'll try and work a full day, running my own business. It's not a 9 to 5, and then you're going to be out in the evening, and you've got this event to go to, that event to go to. Oh, do you want to speak here? Do you want to be? No, you can't do it all, because you want to give the best of yourself, and to do that you have to make sure that you are charged.
Yeah.
So I've learned to say no, and I think that's really, really important, because a challenge, and especially as women, I think we want to be able to do it all, and we want to seem to do it all, and we can't.
Yeah.
And then get help where you can. I have a cleaner. I because when I look at the fact of, yes, of course I do a little bit of housework, but actually, if you can afford to get somebody to help you do it, then do it, because although you're paying for that service, what are you gaining back? And I'm gaining back that valuable time, which is important to me. So where you can, call in help, whether from your network or from professionals, to just ease that burden. And I'd say try not to do it all. It's a thing that women think we have to do, and no, let's not.
Setting boundaries.
We always say it's like protect your own energy, because it's like it starts with that, and it's one of the most. It is one. I've learned it as well, and I think it's not selfish to say no. You're able to give so much more. It's just about quality over quantity.
It really
it's
is
the right decision, and when you protect your energy, you're able to give back more as a mum, as a manager, as a worker, as a leader, all of those things.
And as a partner as well, exactly.
Thank you. That's a great answer for that one. I am a new addition to the DLL group. It's my privilege to be in there with that group of women. And what would your advice be, Ellie, for someone else who wanted to build a community and start reaching out to people?
I would say go for it and do it. Before we had DLL, we were SWAT. Remember, Jules?
Yeah, supporting women ad technologists, SWAT team. Send in the SWAT team.
I never knew that.
Oh yeah, I found a business card with it on the other day.
I've still got mine as well. I'm keeping it. It's bloody brilliant. So yeah, before we had DLL, we had SWAT. So it's awesome that we're really passionate about. But yeah, definitely do it. There are so many like-minded, whether it's like-minded women, whether it's like-minded individuals. If you have a passion, if you have an idea, you will find others that that share that passion and share that
Share it.
idea.
Yeah.
And you can't underestimate the support of the community. I mean, during the pandemic, we had, and we still continue to have several spin-off groups from DLL. So we've got a kids channel, we've got a health channel, we've got a pets channel. I don't have pets. I'm not in the pets channel, but we've got all these different channels because everybody has different needs, right? Just because we're women, some of us have children and some of us don't. And those that don't probably don't want to hear about, Tommy's nappy that exploded or someone's teeth.
Blowout.
Seen that. I don't want to hear about Tommy's nappy that exploded.
No, I don't want to hear it.
But you know what I mean? So it's also being mindful that there are different people going through different challenges, and actually just because we are one community, everybody doesn't have the same need at all the time. So that's what we've tried to do, to be sensitive to that. I also, during the pandemic, created a group for Black women in the industry. The reason why is that when I noticed with DLL that, and DLL, gosh, we're probably about 300 of us now. And what I realised is that some of the colleagues that I'd introduced to the group, who I know have opinions and I know have a great voice, and they just weren't expressing themselves. And I wondered why that was. Is it that they didn't feel that it was a safe space? There was obviously a lot going on around the whole George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. So I reached out to a few women and said to them, look, would you like a space that, you can maybe share with other people who look like you and then can understand what you're going through? So it's small. It's like about 40 of us. And it's called Thrive For, and it's basically about thriving for success. And the idea is to make sure that we are championing each other, but also when opportunities come, like speaking opportunities or engagements, things like that, that you're actually sharing that within the network. Because people now often come to me, which is great, and I'm not offended at all when people are like, oh, we need a speaker. Do you know any females? Do you know women of colour who can speak? Yes, I do. And
I've got 40 of them in a community.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really important because, on the flip side, when people are organising events, they don't always know where to go, and you see the same people on stage. So if we can help and encourage and give people a leg up, why would you not do that?
Ren, who's our podcast producer, if there's a blog that Ren did, which is on the Digital Voice website, and it was Ren interviewing me and talking to me about International Women's Day.
That was awesome.
What I actually was stressing was going, I love the fact, I think we lean in more about, well, what's your community? So let's take gender out of it and just go, well, what are you interested in? The same way that DLL created those individual communities, there's another one called adtech group that again had lots of communities. And I thought, actually, that's what it should be more, leaning on where you have people that are like-minded and you've got something in common. Similarities in whatever that is. And I think that's really powerful. There was another thing you'd said as well about that, there's barriers, etc. And we did a session on smashing through the glass ceiling, and I went, I never see that the ceiling existed. I didn't see it, mainly because I got really bad eyesight. But if it was there, I just went through it. So I didn't go round it or jumped it. I just smashed it. And I'm kind of trying to say that as well. It's almost that there's so much of it that is our own mental blocker on stuff.
Yes.
And I know, Ellie, we delved into this when we were on stage at MadFest last July, and the session was on 5% of female founders, what the fuck? And we called out going, we think we're making steps forward. And it was a really, really enjoyable and very engaging session. And I put out a call on that stage to go, right, 12 months time, I challenged myself to bring along a set of female leaders. And by the way, to our listeners, if you are a female leader, and especially if you set up a company in the last 12 months, get in touch, because I want you on stage alongside me, and probably Ellie, I might have you with me. But that's our call out. We had all of DigiRise in the audience. I still want to know, right, what's stopping that final leap for those founders getting on board, going, fuck it, I'm going to do it.
Probably fear. Fear is probably the number one cause, isn't it? So fear of failure. I think to do it successfully, you need to have the why, don't you? The why factor. So why are you doing it? What is your motivation? I think we touched on it earlier, that fact that women are juggling so much. So parenthood, of course, is a shared responsibility, but depending on the situation that people are in. Sometimes women takes more of an active role. It could be the fear of financial, demise, or not having the financial success that you need. Um, Oh, it's and also if you look at the amount of funding that female-led businesses get, I think it's less than 3%, and in terms of black businesses, it's less than 1% in terms of VC funding. So, we've Jules, you have, I have, this good child with Digi Learning. We've all fortunately been able to kind of self-fund and start our businesses, but not everybody can do that. And we've kind of grown the businesses. And if I look at you and what you've done, I mean, I saw the other day, I think it's 11 years you've had the digital voice, isn't it?
11 years. Yeah. It started as me, now at 29
I think
people.
that's absolutely brilliant.
But it took a long time, though.
It does take time, and now you're in the US.
Yeah.
It does take time, but during that time, you have to have that cushion and that barrier, and it's hard. I mean, when the pandemic first hit, because of what Lisa and I do in terms of helping companies land and launch, there was a bit of a time when it was squeaky bum. We were a bit like, okay, shit, stuff pipelines dried up a little bit, but you can either, it's that fight or flight mode, isn't it? And we kind of went into fight mode, and we're lucky to kind of have ridden that wave, but not everyone can do that, and yeah, and people get scared about that.
I think if I was going to give, I'm going to throw a bit of advice in as well for anybody listening. There, I always believe in the power of three, and especially if you're setting up, especially if your business is you're doing more of a consulting business or anything. It's the power of three. I did not set up the digital voice until there were three companies that came and said, we want you to be the voice of our company. That's where it stemmed from. And I always say to people, just don't risk it with one or two. Wait for the third. Know that you've got, and the same goes, I suppose, know that you've got three potential customers. Going out there and saying, would you buy this? And once three people have gone yes, know that that's enough to be a relatively stable start. That would be my bit of advice. I don't know if you've got any really standout bits.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, on that, I think that test and learn, you're right. I mean, we do that with or prospects before they even become clients, because everybody thinks, I deal with a lot of CEOs and founders, and they all, primarily within the ad tech space, they've all kind of built a great platform. It's their baby. They think it's the best looking baby that it is. And I always say to them, nobody's going to tell you that your baby's ugly, but they will tell me. So we will, before we even start working with a client, we will go out there, and to your point, Jules, we'll test that there is a market for it, because you can become so closed-minded and tunnel vision because you're working on something which you think is great, brilliant, but unless you've got a market that's going to buy into that, it's almost irrelevant how great this thing is. So you have to make sure that there's a viable market for it, and we do that with our clients. That due diligence piece is so important.
You guys have both ticked off a big question that I wanted to ask my two female founders that I'm sat with about founding a company. Is there any other advice from when you first started up, Ellie, that you think that was a really key thing for me in the beginning?
First, I talked about the why. That's important. Have a business plan. It's incredible that, the people that don't have a business plan, like, what are you doing? You're just believing into something and hope it will work. So definitely have a business plan. Be really honest about your strengths and weaknesses as a person, but also within business. What are you good at, and what do you enjoy, and what are you less good at? And get people in who can complement you, and especially if you're co-founding, but also as you're hiring a team, get people in who can kind of take up some of those areas that you're not as strong in. Work with professionals. Yes, you can do your own tax return, but why? Just get an accountant to do it.
Yeah. Why would you ever do that?
Yeah, exactly. It just alleviates the headache. So that's the thing about having that financial buffer. Get a legal expert in, or have a legal expert that you can call upon when you need help, rather than trawling through the internet yourself. So it's really important to get those specialists in, and then, as I say, focus on those areas that you're strong in, and when you can, bring people in to make up for those areas that you're a little less strong in.
I'm going to mirror that as well. I 100% believe in actually working what brings you joy. Do what brings you joy and love it. It really shows through. I still hand on heart love what I do, but then, and it really is because it mirrors what at the age of, what was it, Ren, who's listening on this as our producer, I think I said at 19 I wanted to be a copywriter, an actress, and a journalist. And I did all three. I just do it now in one guise under a PR agency, and I still
Exactly.
stay. That's what it is. Do what brings you joy.
Yeah, I studied journalism as well. I studied journalism at University of Arts London, and again, when I'm on stage, moderating, whatever, it's a form of, and chairing panels and things
Oh,
like
you
that.
love it. You're so
Yeah,
good.
both of
But,
you.
but so you, I learned from the best, Jules, and that's the thing, and it is, it's taking that passion, yeah, you have to love what you do because you can work bloody long hours, and I work weekends, but then the flip side is that I can take days off during the week and go for lunch with my husband if he's working out. So there are benefits, but there are downsides. But yeah, you've got to love what you do as well.
So here's a question. We've potentially got a little bit of a bear market this year and a little bit of a slightly tough start to the year. And so it's curious, and I don't know the answer to this. Is this the year you'd recommend launching, or is it the year you get? So do you leap, or do you sit back? What do you think? What do you think, Ellie?
Leap. You've got to leap, haven't you? I mean, sit back and wait for what? You don't know what's happening next year.
So
I mean, when is
true.
a good time? Is there ever a good time? Not really. You just have to do it and bloody get on with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, leap. But as I say, do a bit of research before you leap. But, make sure you've got a plan, but definitely leap.
That's a good answer. Thank you. And I want to circle back to communities as well, because it seems like that has been really foundational and tied into a lot of what we're talking about today. What do you think the attitude of women coming into communities is these days? While it might be a tougher year, are women coming into those communities feeling more downbeat, or is it hopeful and optimistic?
I think hopeful and optimistic. And I don't want to be downbeat. That's going to be horrible. But I was going to say, don't bother joining my community. But I was going to. I'm only joking. I think you've got to be hopeful and optimistic, haven't you?
Yes.
I'm always like glass half full kind of person, because why look at the downside? There's downsides to everything, right? But you've got to take the leap, and you've got to be optimistic. And I think that there are so many great networks for women at various stages. I mean, we talked a lot about DLR, but there is Women in Programmatic Network, which I know we're all involved with as well. There's
Wackle.
with Wackle, yeah, Women in Programmatic Network. They're slightly younger than probably Jules and I are in terms of the founders, and at different stages. And there's a huge amount of enthusiasm, and there's an opportunity there for people to kind of learn different topics, and the community support is great. And I think generally people are wanting to lean into these networks, yeah, and people are realizing how important, because we work differently now. I mean, you guys are 100% remote. Lisa and I, for the last few years, even pre-pandemic, we're in town a couple of days a week maximum. But so other than that, you need that community and support. And it also means that you can generally lean in a bit more because you have that flexibility. You don't have to all travel an hour into town to meet up. You can
Be in
be on
one
you
spot.
can be on a
Yeah.
WhatsApp group, you can be on a hangout, and you've got that sense of community there. So yeah, I think there's general optimism around it.
Well, clearly, everyone that is coming in is following your example, which is what makes a leader, of being that shiny, optimistic person to look up to. And what would you say as our final big question before the dreaded, famous,
Loved quick fire
mostly
round.
loved, sometimes feared quick fire round? If you could give us your 3 top tips that you think it takes to be a leader, and what mustn't you have? What makes a bad leader?
Got to be decisive. You've got to be able to make those tough decisions and stick to those decisions. Tough decisions, good decisions, bad decisions. You have to be decisive when you're a leader. I think it's really important to be collaborative. Understand it comes about, it's about leading from a front, isn't it? And it's about also bringing your team along on that journey. So care about your vision, being collaborative, bringing in people and play into your team's strengths because you understand your team's strengths, and then kind of bringing them along on the journey. Communication is key in terms of being a bad leader. So good communication can make a great leader. But gosh, I've worked with so-called leaders who just didn't communicate. They had an idea in their head and thought that everybody assumed everyone was going to be on the same trajectory and not have an idea what they're doing. And also, you don't want to dictate. Yes, it may be your company, your vision, but you actually need people to understand and to believe in what you're doing if you want them to do it well. In terms of bad leadership traits, micromanagement, and this tends to come from sometimes it's early leaders, leaders that are early in their stage of leadership because they're a little bit insecure and they literally think, oh, I have to do everything, or
Sign off on everything.
emails, make sure you CC. No, empower your people and trust in your people in your team, and give them the autonomy. So you don't want micromanagers. So the last bad leadership trait, if you're the inability to foster a good culture or understand what makes a good culture, and that can be down to empathy, just not understanding who's around you, who's your team, who your customers and your clients are, and then kind of tailoring your approach to that.
I think those are all really good. That's brilliant, isn't it? And I think anything those really stood out for me, and I mirror those too, and I believe very strongly in that. My biggest frustration is when I see inconsistent leaders, and
Mm,
I've seen it makes teams very, very nervous. And then especially when that leader is not just inconsistent, but layer on a bit of bullying in it, and you've got an actual workplace that's very, very toxic.
yeah,
So
that's a really
I'm
good
so
point,
pleased
Jules.
that we're
Yeah.
pushing the narrative around calling out bad leaders and highlighting good culture. I'm delighted in the industry. There's so many awards for good culture, and that makes bad leaders have to step up, and that's sort of what we go hell yes to. So, but it's time. It's time. You know it's time, Ellie.
Oh
Da da
boy.
da. Ellie's been at the end of my quick fire round so many times.
I know. Damn, what's she going to ask me
Oh.
now?
I know. Sometimes I do insane ones. I think I've actually been quite mature here, if I'm honest, today, and I've come up with ones that are actually related to the secret of being a great
I
leader.
know.
So, are we
There's been
ready?
definitely been a lot worse.
Right, here we go. Answer the first thing that comes into your head. Here we go. Leap first or learn later?
Definitely leap first.
Leap first. Brilliant. Leading from the front requires what?
Leading from the front requires being a visible participant.
Perfect. A good leader must have dot dot dot.
Empathy.
When the shit hits the fan, what do you do?
When the shit hits the fan, I allow myself to think, oh shit. And then I spring into action. How can I remedy this?
Yeah, think first, act later. I love that. What is the lasting piece of advice that stuck with you?
Touched on it earlier. It was my mum just giving me the belief, and sorry, this isn't a one-word answer, but you can do anything. So just be able, you can be anything and you can do anything. It does take work, but you can do it if you want it hard. Want it.
You can be anything. You can do anything. I love that. Who do you want to celebrate for leading from the front?
Well, this isn't a one-person answer again. Sorry, Jules. No mucking up your
Yeah,
format.
it's all right. You can flout the rules.
Definitely all my co-founders and digital leading ladies. We've been a
Hell
force
yeah.
to be reckoned with over the years, and we continue to go
Woo.
from strength to strength. And then my good friend and leader Karen Blackett. She, when I first came, um, I first met her when I was in Group M, just seeing a black female in that position and going from strength to strength, and we're great mates now. And she still continues to champion women, but also everybody within the industry.
Brilliant, and a great one to call out. Thank you for that. Your hope for a gender equal world is?
But we don't have to even talk about it. It would be great, wouldn't it, if we get to point, and I doubt this will be in my lifetime, where gender parity is taken for granted, and our young girls can go into any role and do anything and be anything, and more importantly, be paid and recognised for what on parity as a male counterparts.
The mic has been dropped. Gender equality and embracing that. Let's just hope that, I look forward to the same in International Women's Day in 2024. Don't want it to be about the gender pay gap. I just wish that it didn't exist and we move on to things that are that's going to embolden people, that's going to push people forward, not deal with stuff that should have been dealt with and shouldn't even exist. So I am fully behind you on that. Thank you very much, Ellie Edwards-Scott, for the quick fire round.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ellie, that brings us to the end of another episode of Off Record On Point. For all of you listening, you can find out where to keep up with Ellie in the description or on our website, thedigitalvoice.co.uk, as well as you can find a whole other load of useful resources to keep this conversation going. Thank you, Ellie, for joining us. It has been our pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Off Record On Point, the Digital Voice podcast unzipped. I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. Enjoy the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow to never miss an episode.
You can stay connected with us at thedigitalvoice.co.uk and across all social platforms. Just look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again next time for another undercover industry deep dive. All off record, all on point.